In my last 12 sales roles, I got results so fast that it felt illegal, especially since I got promoted those 12 times in my first 8 years into Fortune 500 company. Now, in each of these roles, which were wild competitive, I became number one in a relatively short time frame while winning every award possible. And this is even through the 2008 recession. And I'm going to show you the strongest growth levers I use to get these results so you can too. Let's start with the first one, which is know your sustained success metrics. And this is a really powerful formula I learned from Todd Schneider, as an exec at one of the big companies. And the formula is very, very simple. It contains 3 core components, which is your number of discovery calls, or disco, multiplied by your win rate, multiplied by your ACV, and that'll equal your total sold that you actually generate. So let's use a really, really simple example. Let's say if you run on a quarterly basis, because you can use for any time frame, let's say you run 50 discovery calls on average for the quarter. Let's say your win rate is 25%. Let's just say your ACV, 50K for simplicity's sake. That means in the quarter, you'll close $625,000. Not bad. Now, let's say, for example, if you want to increase your numbers, now typically the average rep or most sales leaders say, hey, you know what? Instead of doing 50, let's just make more calls, send more emails, book some more meetings. Let's get yourself to say 60 or 65 meetings in that quarter. So let's just say, for example, you get yourself to 60 meetings in that quarter. All right. And we'll keep everything exactly the same with a 25% win rate and an ACV of 50K. That means now you'll close $750,000. Now, if you're getting paid, let's call it 10% on your total sold, that means you'll end up making 75K in commissions here versus your prior, which is 62.5K. So nice little, about over 10K bump. So really not too shabby. Now here's a beautiful part about knowing your success formula, which is these are other levers you can pull as well. So let's just say, for example, if you decide that you want to actually keep your activity exactly the same, so still run the 50 qualified meetings you're going to run each quarter, but let's just say you want to focus on increasing your skills, becoming far better at discovery, multi-threading, running the deal, etc., and you get your win rate from 25% to 35%. And let's just say, for example, your average deal size is still 50K. That now means you'll close $875,000. And that means you'll make 87.5K in commissions. And when you really compare these two, seeing more people, or you're actually increase your win rate, here you're actually working smarter and far more effective because you're actually working the same number of hours. You're just far better at your job and you're actually making a lot more. In this example here, you're actually going to be making an extra $12,000 plus by simply being better at the job versus just working hard. And if you compare it to the original scenario, you're actually making 25K more by simply being far more effective at the game. And of course, obviously, you can probably see where this is going, where if you also get really effective at your win rate and also get really effective at also increasing your average deal size, these numbers become really just exponential in terms of how they actually go. And this is one of the most powerful things you can realize, which is, hey, if I can actually get better at increasing my win rate and my average deal size, then I can actually have exponential results while working less hours. For instance, I used to have this rep named Ivan who was an absolute stud. Now, this guy, he was your kind of prototypical grinder. He was work tons of hours, see a lot of people, tons of meetings, right? Very high win rate, but his average deal size was really, really small. And because of that, he was constantly be grinding, and he would close 4, 5, 6 accounts a week compared to the top rep who'd maybe close 2, 3 deals per week. His deals are just so much smaller and less revenue. So he was constantly grinding to get to that point. And over time, when he realized the power of the sustained success formula, he realized, shoot, I actually need to be able to go after bigger opportunities. And once he realized that, and we focused on keeping the high win rate while also increasing his average deal size, well, not really surprising, he hit President's Club that year and became one of the top reps. And it's really the power of knowing your actual numbers, sustained success metrics, and then pulling it accordingly. Now, in some situations, for sure, you're going to want to increase your activity up to a certain level, but the reality is if you focus on what's far more high level, which is your win rate and also your actual ACV, you can see an exponential impact to the total revenue you close for that time frame, whether it's a month, a quarter, or even a year. Number 2, solve for the objection upfront. If you think about your prototypical sales cycle, initially you can have your discovery and you can go all the way through, and eventually you can get to the point where you're going to close a deal and make money. As you can see my terrible drawing right there. And the reality is, it seems obviously very, very simple, but oftentimes, majority of us, myself included, we get to this point where realistically probably somewhere around here, right? It's really a range. We're going to have some sort of like objections here, different objections that happen that hold us back from being able to actually close a deal. This could be from, hey, I need to talk to other stakeholders, to I need to get other approval, to we don't have the budget, to we don't have enough funds or budget got pushed off, to we're talking to a few other vendors first before we're going to decide, we need to prove a concept, blah, 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 blah. These are all things that can happen just over time. And what I used to do was just allow them to happen. I get really frustrated with the objection, like, oh, again, they want to talk to a few more vendors and they'll can get back to me. It is what it is. This is just part of the sales process. Now, here's what I eventually learned. Most of these objections can actually be eliminated up front if we run a better and tighter process. Meaning, can we take these objections that we're seeing here and insert them to other parts of the sales process up front to completely remove them, so when it gets to the very end, they become non-existent. So let me give you really simple examples. I came from a world at Cintas that was an incredibly competitive world where we were always competing against competition, and on top of that, we were literally 4 or 5x the competition like all the time. Now, obviously, I believe we had better products and services and we were well worth it, but it's really hard to compete against a competitor in which their pricing is literally a fraction of what you have to offer. And I realized over time, this is a really common objection, and I'll get so frustrated with it because they would want to meet with the competition. Then we had a lot of different competitors. They want to take their time, maybe even go through an RFP. It'd be a whole thing. And eventually, if I didn't run the deal properly, it would just stall out and they would just get stuck in status quo. So that's when I realized that I can actually teach them how to be better buyers. And that started with knowing who all my competitors were up front. So the first thing I started doing was I started inserting into my sales process up front, like uncovering who they're already talking to, what was their experience like, and what was some of their buyer criteria. It seems very obvious now, but I wasn't doing that up front. On top of that, what I also realized was I need to know the competitors inside so well that I could actually educate the buyers on really what they had to offer too, and make it easier for them to buy from me. And one of the simplest things that I did was I literally created a competitive binder, meaning I started going through and building a complete binder that was tabbed out all my competitors, and I had literally copies of their agreements, copy of their invoices, and dozens of stories of people, prospects I had switched that are using that ex-competitor that switched over to me. And the cool part was all this type of collateral with myself up for my entire sales process. I could plant little seeds all throughout about how I knew about the competition and show them proof of people that came and switched over to me. So this way, as we came to the very end, I'm looking to ask for the business. There's none of this, I need to talk to your competition or do anything else, because they had already got all the information they needed to make the best possible decision. And because I became the trusted advisor, and by the way, I wasn't just talking trash about the competition, etc. I was helping educate them on what the industry did, how they made money, and what potential things they had to be on the lookout for, and establish clear buying criteria that obviously position our company as the best. But my point was really this, which was I was solving for the objection up front. I wanted to minimize chances that was going to happen because I did my discovery up front, but then I planted all these seeds all throughout. So you want to start thinking about this as well, because whatever common objections you have, how can you plant the seeds up front? How can you minimize chance of it being an issue up front, being an issue later on? For example, another issue I also ran into was because we were far more expensive than everyone else, I would literally mention that up front as part of my discovery process, letting them know stuff like, hey, listen, I'll be really transparent with you, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. Typically when companies switch over to us, they might be a little bit surprised because yes, obviously we have the greatest value and greatest support. However, we are typically 4 or 5 times what potentially the competition is going to be. And I'll just leave that up front and they're like, okay. And if they were like a pretty open decision maker, they would say something like, you know what? I think that makes sense because obviously you are a better service, but like I'm okay with that as long as I know we get our problem solved. So this became very powerful, even disqualifying opportunities which were only price sensitive, or for the tire kickers that are only care about the lowest possible price. My point to you is you can literally solve really a majority of the most common objections up front by leading with things that are going to help neutralize it down the road. Number 3, optimize for lifetime value. The issue is a lot of reps, what they focus on is optimizing for, hey, what money am I going to make today? That's my little counter if you couldn't tell. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because obviously you're trying to close deals to obviously hit your number and make money. But the greatest sales professionals, they focus on not just the time frame of what's going on today, but they're looking years out. What that ends up meaning is you're going to do very different things up front in terms of how you run your discovery, how you do a proof of concept, how you do a deep dive into the opportunity from the problems you're solving from each department to each division, conversion to full penetration to a full account. Because when you truly are seeking to solve a problem, you're going to pause on trying to throw a bunch of solutions at them for a short-term gain. You're going to look at a longer time frame, and you can do different things as part of it. And the really beautiful part is when you focus on doing this, you end up showing them better solutions in which when they see it, yes, it might potentially slow down your sales cycle, but long-term wise, as you go further down along it, their deal size ends up multiplying at a whole new level. And sometimes they'll even close right now at a larger amount that you would have thought possible versus a small amount, which most people are just kind of chasing after. And the biggest thing is being able to position yourself as a comprehensive solution and a partner in achieving whatever transformation they're looking to do versus just solving a singular small problem. For instance, I had this amazing rep named Yor who worked for me for several years. He had President's Club pretty much every single year. He's an absolute stud. He's an enterprise AE over at Gartner right now. And what was amazing about Yor was, especially early on, we started to really learn how to really master truthful discovery and really do a deep dive as a trusted advisor. He was able to take these deal sizes that historically the average rep would probably close for, let's call it about 13K, 10 to 13K TCV. He would take that same size prospect and it would be like 65, 70K TCV. So literally 4 to 5x the average deal size to sell the exact same prospect. And the only difference was he wasn't overloading a bunch of, extra licenses or whatever, but what he was actually doing was he was diving deep to uncover the biggest problems, uncovering and truly make an impact at that organization, and then providing a comprehensive solution that had many different products and services while also tapping into other departments, divisions, so it was better penetrated. And the really cool part was even these smaller average size deals that everyone else was closing that he made 4 or 5x, when he went after like larger, mid-market enterprise deals, they became even bigger as a result because he ran the same philosophy. And this is where if you think more strategically, like a strategic rep, regardless of whatever you sell, so you don't necessarily have to be a strategic AE, you don't have to be an enterprise AE to think strategically. If you start thinking strategically, even for SMB and mid-market deals, you'll find you can sell far more into that account up front and also down the road as well. Because the most beautiful part was, for example, early on, you present a full comprehensive solution that has, lots of different things on there, right? It's got this, it's got that, and the total opportunity for that deal. For example, it could be 250K, which sounds awesome. But let's just say, for example, right now they say, hey, that sounds absolutely incredible, but all we really want right now is we just want this one singular thing that we basically had reached out to you for. And that's just that is only, let's call it 10K. But here's a really cool part, because if you've done a good job with this, you've done a good deep discovery, you have now planted all these seeds now that, depending on how your role is structured, that you can go back now and can you start upselling them down the road in the next few weeks, next few months, next few years, or if you have to do a handout to somebody else like an account manager, these are seeds and potential they can go back in now and they can extrapolate and grow that account and that lifetime value, which obviously helps benefit the company and also really benefits you because you're actually doing something right. But the cool part is obviously the larger the LTV and the more products you actually sell inside, the stickier the business and the more likely you'll actually stay with your company. Number 4, focus on high leverage prospects. That's a really, really powerful lever if you can tell right there. Focus on high leverage prospects. And this is absolutely vital. This is spending the time with the right people in the buying process that can actually influence decisions. The mistake a lot of people make is they actually go what's known as below the line. So let's just say, for example, this is like a corporate pyramid, if you will, and they go basically below the line. And they go in there and they start talking to like director levels, they talk to manager levels, and maybe even below as well. And again, there's a time and place for everything, which can be very, very useful, right? But the people that actually drive the buying process, but also have the main executive initiatives, are going to be people at the very top. So it's identifying who those people are, whether it's going to be a CIO, a CTO, the CFO, it could be the CEO. And it's using tools like LinkedIn Sales Navigator or other tools your company may provide to do hyper-targeted searches to find who those true economic buyers are. And those are the people that can really determine where funds go. They can access more funds. And what I sometimes see is people say on LinkedIn, hey, you got to go below the line first. You got to get your information. And yes, sometimes that can be very, very useful to get all your information and eventually go up and have an executive point of view to really share with them. But what you don't want to do is if you go low is you don't want to get stuck in these spots right here, because if you get stuck here, and this is what most people do, they get stuck here and they're hoping for an intro up top, they get stuck there, they never actually make it above the line. So what you want to do is ideally you want to start really at the very top to begin with. You go at the very top of the highest person and you do your research so you can make sure you have a clear point of view about how you can help them achieve their biggest objectives. And this is one of the things where when you go to power first, it actually will compress your deal cycle and increase the deal size. And let me give you a really simple example. This is years ago, and there's a company called Columbia Sportswear. They're about $1 billion sportswear brand. And this was an account that had been lost for years now. It was a dead account. And a lot of people say, hey, listen, you have this book, you have this account in your portfolio. Like, people try to go off for years. It's a dead deal. It's a dead opportunity. No one can ever break in. It's a waste of time, blah, 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 blah. And what I realized was, when I took a look at all the notes, is most people were going after the engineering departments. They're going after the chief engineers, they're going to engineering managers, maybe the director of engineering, but that was really it, right? So instead, what did I do? I knew because of the size of the organization, I actually didn't go to the C level. I could actually go for at the VP level. So I started targeting at the VP level and started doing my outreach, going in there, calls, emails, I'd sent them stuff. It took me several months to actually break through, but eventually I booked a meeting with their VP of Ops. And once I actually started initiating and engaging with them, the cool part is what happened is he started introducing me to other stakeholders, right? Getting the other people involved. I think we had total maybe like 8 or 9 different people involved as part of the process. Right? And it moved actually relatively quickly because it took me more work up front to get inside, but now I had their sponsorship to be able to go down to the rest of the organization, talk to other people, right? And, fast forward, I was able to close that deal down, ended up being a pretty sizable deal, ended up being like $500K plus, right? It was a pretty good sized deal for me, especially at that time. And that was really cool. But the moral of the story was everyone was completely shocked. And they were shocked because no one could ever break in. And why couldn't they break in? They were going after the lowest level people. Instead, I went up top and I went after the right person. And everyone else tried to go in low. They tried to talk to these people. They got stuck at these levels and they never could go up there. And one of the fastest, greatest growth levers is literally talking to the right people. Like, you can have mediocre sales skills, but talk to the right prospects and you'll move deals far faster than someone who's highly skilled but meeting with the wrong people. And this really ties into my next growth lever, which is prioritizing pre-work over post-work. I find a lot of times, especially if you're going after high value prospects, maybe your tier 1 accounts, your biggest opportunities, you have to do your homework upfront. You have to research them thoroughly. You want to look literally everywhere. So Google is just one piece, but look on LinkedIn, look on Google. If that prospect has been on podcast interviews, they've been on YouTube, watch those videos, listen to those interviews. If there's 10K reports, read the 10K report, use AI to read through and find the most important bullet points of the key initiatives, read through earnings transcript calls, use Perplexity, do your homework, and do the thorough pre-work before you even have those meetings. And the reason I was able to even close a deal like that was because I did all my pre-work. And let me give you another example. So we had this other really big opportunity in our town. This is when I was actually as a sales manager, and it was a really big opportunity. It's a very large coffee company called Boyd Coffee, which is very big in the Pacific Northwest. And they were actually headquartered in my rep's territory. And, most reps just want to just blindly call in or do some terrible research and make some calls. Well, I want to do deeper homework and actually go in there, and because they're actually physically in an area, but also see if we can pop in and hand deliver something to really stand out. So have my rep research properly who to actually talk to and who we want to go see. And, I was in the field with them. We went out to meet. So I asked my guy, I said, hey, listen, when we get there, who are we asking for? He's like, oh, hey, we're going to see if we can meet with the VP of Ops. Now, just given the size of the organization, I'm like, okay, more than likely, because this is the headquarters, I'm like, I bet the CEO, who had the same last name as a coffee company, is probably still relatively involved still with a lot of things in this organization. So, we get there and I tell him, listen, instead of asking for the VP of Ops, let's just ask for the CEO. And we actually get there. And the funny part is we get there, it's one of those physical buildings. You walk in and they had a phone tree that you can dial in. It had a phone, no receptionist. They didn't have a receptionist to gatekeep us, right? So all they had was literally a phone tree with the names of the people and no titles, and then also the phone. So I picked the phone up and I'm like, hey, I want you to call the CEO. And my rep's a little nervous. I'm like, no problem. Let me just call. to see if he's able to come out. So I pick up the phone, I call, make a quick pitch, and the guy comes on. He's like, I'll be right there. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. And this guy comes out, one of the nicest guys I ever met. This is the CEO. And, comes out, he's like, hey guys, I'll tell you what, I never get cold called really. So that was pretty ballsy. So it was kind of fun. We had some fun with that. And, made a little pitch, right? We had brought something for his VP of Ops. And we just basically validated with him, like, hey, would that be the right person to talk to? He's like, you're absolutely right. That is going to be the guy. And I'll tell you what, give me your package you brought of the goodies, and I'm going to put it over at his office. And this way you can just reach out to him later. Just tell him, I told you to have a conversation, right? And that was amazing because we'd done our pre-work. So we knew who to talk to. We knew he's the CEO. We knew the VP of Ops. Right? We knew exactly where we had to go. We did our best with the outreach. It wasn't definitely perfect when I spoke to him, but it was enough to at least get him to know us and trust us enough to be able to refer us over. And the cool part is my rep ended up calling the VP of Ops next day. Very easy appointment to book because we got referred right over by the CEO. And fast forward about a month or so, that deal got closed down and my rep made at least $5,000 off that deal. And that is really the power of doing that pre-work beforehand. It's not just being a gunslinger, kind of hoping for the best. It's literally doing the homework to fully maximize the opportunity. Now, obviously, if you're selling to maybe SMB, something more transactional, you can only do so much pre-work. But if you're selling to mid-market or enterprise, or maybe you're a rep who sells all types, which is what I did, I made sure for all the highest value opportunities, we did lots of pre-work to stand out. Because at the end of the day, the separation is in the preparation. All right, number 6, use personalized video outreach. Now, I know no one probably uses camcorders like this anymore, but it's a camera, so you get my point. And this is such a simple growth lever that unfortunately most people just don't do enough. Like, you think about in today's time, how much AI spam is out there from like emails, copy. I mean, she even calls now, right? But what really stands out is something that feels hyper personalized, especially something like video outreach. Now, I know some of you are going to say, hey, Marcus, so I've seen some like these AI videos that are starting to come out. Yes, for sure. That's going to happen eventually over time. But as of right now, this is something just still very, very powerful that most people are not really doing. And it doesn't mean your videos have to be perfect, but if you use personal videos as part of your outreach, as whether it's part of your LinkedIn campaign or your cold outreach campaign, or your sequence, and having a custom video and whichever tool you want to use, whether it's Loom or video or something else like that, where it's really clear, it doesn't need to be perfect, it's clear, you're focused on their pain points, how potentially you can help them as well, that can really stand out. Because reality is it's very engaging, it stands out, and really it just makes it much more human. For instance, even when I started my business back in September 2019, the reality was the company I was at was a little bit old school. They really didn't like me posting on content, etc. So nobody knew who I was on LinkedIn. That wasn't a thing. And I literally had to start my business from scratch. And one of the ways I did it was literally through personalized video outreach, literally making hyper-targeted lists in Sales Navigator and then sending out connection requests. And after they accept, literally just taking my phone and filming personalized walking videos in my house outside and see if help people and offer them free value. This is how I started booking meetings. This is how I started growing my business, literally from scratch. And if you don't think it works, I promise you, it does if you just simply put forth the effort of trying to just be different than everyone else. And the cool part is the video outreach, it can be part of your top of the funnel sequence, but you can also utilize it through the other parts of your sales process as well. So I'll give you a really, really simple example. I was coaching one of my account executives in one of my programs, and they're deeper in the sales cycle, and they're actually wrapping up a POC, a proof of concept. It's an enterprise deal. The stakeholder says, hey, listen, can you just send me the pricing that we discuss? And this way I can run it by the CFO. Now, again, I knew if he just put together some numbers and send it over just like that, that would actually not work well. And yes, they did have a meeting set up on the calendar, but he wanted the pricing in advance, right? So here's what I recommend to Alex, my student. I say, hey, listen, this is what you want to do. All right, so first off, what you don't want to do is just not do it. And then this guy's just trying to play one of those games. And this is an enterprise prospect, but we also don't want to just send it right over because there's no real context to the value that you actually have, because they might have forgotten it, even though they are in mid POC. So what you can do is you put together the numbers, and instead of just sending it over, literally just film a Loom video, kind of like you're seeing right now, film a Loom video and just walk through the problems they're running into, the solution that you recommend, the impact so far, and also the overall pricing. Keep it a very short and tight video, right? And of course, that's exactly what it did, and the deals continue to be in place still. So this is the beautiful part of using videos as part of your outreach, but also throughout the other parts of your sales process, especially if you're selling SaaS, the majority of your meetings have just been on Zoom calls or on phone calls. This is another way to stand out as different than what everyone else is doing. Okay, number 7, referrals. All right, do you know the number one reason people do not not get referrals? They don't ask for them. That's the number one reason. So I'm going to walk you through just a really simple format. And this is literally asking every single time, whether this is on the discovery, this is on the demo, this is after each a quick touch-based meeting. Every time you want to ask for referrals. And the reason I say every time is reality is you're probably not going to ask every time, but if you just have it as a cadence, it's easier to remember. And by the way, I'm definitely not perfect. So this is why I also, for myself, remind myself to ask every single time. Look, because if I miss on discovery, I want to make sure I ask it on the next stage. So this way, every time I'm always asking. So let me teach you a really, really simple method. First, you're just going to ask. So let's just say, for example, you had a really great discovery call, and it's going to progress forward into the demo next. Now here's the thing, you can only ask if you've done a good job on discovery. So if you did a really crappy discovery and very transactional, that's super hard to actually be able to ask for referrals. It's very simple. It might sound something like this. I usually like to toot the horn a little bit and then ask for referrals. It might sound something like this. Hey Lisa, it's been really awesome meeting with you today. I love meeting with sales VPs like you who really understand the importance of sales training to really upskill the revenue teams so this would actually hit and exceed their sales targets. Now, who do you know who's maybe also a sales VP like you that potentially open or interested to a training program for the team to really upskill as well? So notice that it's a very simple ask and I'm making it very open-ended. So I'm going to ask first, right? That's the first step. And then I'm going to pause for a second, let them kind of see. And sometimes they say they don't really know anybody, right? And then number two, I'm going to give them a little bit of direction. And that direction is really to help design to guide them to somewhere else that can help them to think a little bit, right? So, for example, let's just say if it's a large organization, I know there's other sales VPs and they each kind of make their own decisions, then I might say, hey, no worries. Like, what about the APAC sales VP or the EMEA sales VP? Do you think potentially they might be open to something kind of similar to what we're discussing right now? So you can see how beautiful that can be to really kind of give them a little bit of direction, kind of open it up again. And again, they might still say, you know what? That's a good question. I'm going to talk to them first before I have you talk to them. So I'll talk to them first. Cool. No problem. It's not a big deal. You're just kind of planting seeds again, just like before. Little seeds that you're planting, right? That you're going to want to hopefully will sprout into a flower down the road. Okay. And then number three, this only works if you have some sort of incentive that your company offers. So not every company has this, but if there's some sort of incentive you can offer to give them, that can be really, really useful as part of it. So this could be anything, whether it's like, a free trial, it could be some sort of add-on, it could be an extra bonus, etc. Some companies even pay for referrals. So depending on whatever it's going to be, you can let them know as well. So for instance, like even for my own business, we actually give a 10% referral fee for deals that actually get referred to us and close. So I could say something like, hey, listen, no worries. So as you kind of talk with them, just something think about, like, we do offer a referral bonus for anybody who basically kicks over opportunities to actually do close. That's basically 10%. Now, if a company can accept that, we could take that same thing and apply to potentially our engagement if we end up moving forward to down that road. Boom. Super simple. I'll give a really simple example. I remember this years ago. I actually had my sales VP with me in the field, and we had 3 appointments locked up and asked for referrals at every single meeting. I remember going to the first one, asking to run this process, didn't get any. It is what it is. Second meeting, same thing. I closed that deal, did the same thing, asked for referrals, again, didn't get any. Went to the third one, same thing, asked. And what's interesting was after the first ask, the guy was like, I don't know, I think I have to check. He made some joke. I have to check my Rolodex, and he kind of motioned to his computer. And at that point, I'm like, let me just give this guy a little bit of direction. And I said, no worries. Like anybody can think of off the top of your head in your Rolodex that potentially would enjoy the same type of service that we're discussing today. He's like, actually, let me think for a second. He stops and I hear him like clicking through on his computer. He starts like the printer going off, comes back. He gives me like a stack of 50 contacts, names, email addresses, titles, and phone numbers, right? From his own Rolodex, and says, hey, I know these guys personally. Tell them I sent them your way. And my VP was like shocked. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. Now, by the way, that's only happened one time, okay? So it doesn't happen like every time. But my point is more so is if you don't ask, you never know. Number 8, game tapes. Yes, you know exactly what that means. That is literally pulling up your Gong recordings, your Zoom recordings. You're going to press play. You're going to watch it. And you're going to take notes on what you've done well. And this is something that's so wildly powerful because oftentimes we have no idea how we're showing up and how we're coming across in our sales calls with our prospects. And let me give you a really simple example. When I started my business, my win rate was not really that high. In fact, it was probably like 10, 15%. I'm like, man, what is going on here? And it's one of those things where, I just didn't really realize, but like when you're selling for a company and you're selling their products and their services, you get kind of used to it. Things kind of work a certain way if they're more established. But now I was creating my own offers, my own everything. And I really had no idea how I was actually showing up. And I started watching my own Zoom calls and I realized there were just little things I had deviate even from my own sales process. So literally sitting down, comparing to my own powerful framework, and I realized I was really missing components. So I had to tweak those and make them better over time. And of course, now at this point, you consistently run 40% plus across the board for B2C and B2B. And this is why it's so critical to actually watch your game tapes. And this is why even the most elite athletes across the board, they watch game tapes for themselves. They watch their competitors because they're always trying to get better. And if you do this every single week, you just watch one or two of your own calls and you look for areas where you can improve, I promise you, this will become exponential in your growth and in your skills, actually helping you increase your win rate and how you show up. Because one of the things is the more self-awareness you develop about how you show up and how you are running your process, then you can make tweaks to actually improve your game. Number 9, get a coach. Get somebody who has already been where you want to go and they've won at the highest possible level consistently. And this is so vital because this will literally help compress time down for all the things that you're trying to learn and really master. Because ultimately what you're doing is you're saving the time tax of costing yourself those deals and the time it takes for you to figure it out. In reality, most people don't even figure it out. But here's the reality. When you think about the greatest of all time in basketball, Michael Jordan, right? 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards. This dude's a billionaire, Nike-sponsored athlete. But here's the thing. He didn't get there on his own. He had coaches that made him better literally over time. Whether it's Dean Smith, his college coach, Phil Jackson, who coached Jordan into 6 championships, Tim Grover, he wrote the incredible book Relentless, right? His personal trainer performance coach. And literally, there are tons more because I didn't even include his coaches when he was a kid or through high school. Here's the thing. He didn't get a coach when he was already at the very top of the mountain, right? He started getting coaches far earlier. And those coaches helped him stack skills and help them get even faster as a result. And if the GOAT, the greatest of all time, had coaches the entire time because they knew to help him reach his potential, I bet it could help you too. That's why even myself personally, I invested over $300,000 in coaches and masterminds throughout my entire career because I've seen the impact of getting external help and how it can really help shift the paradigm, because sometimes they just need a slight tweak, and that little tweak can make the greatest difference in your actual results. So there you have it. Those are now the greatest growth levers I've taken full advantage of to help become #1 in 12 different roles, can promote 12 times in 8 years. Now, if you want our help to help your team or you to sell more, have a little call with my team below to see if it's a good fit for our coaching programs. And if you want to know how to get your prospects to commit to move forward, you're going to want to watch this next video right here on the screen.